What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. We made it. It's playoff time. It's week 14. You know what time it is. It's start-sit time. Quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends. We're going through every matchup, every fantasy-relevant player, telling you whether you should start them, sit them, flex them, drop them, all that kind of stuff. This week, I'm doing it a little bit differently than I normally do. Normally, I go through every single game in one video, and I have timestamps in the description. Of course, there still will be timestamps in this video. But instead of going through every game in this video, I'm actually going to split it up into two videos. So in this one, we're going to be going through the Thursday night game along with all the 1 p.m. games. And then in tomorrow's video, which will be Thursday, I will go through all the 4 p.m. games until the primetime game. So I just thought I'd split it up for you guys. I know I'm going to go pretty in depth with this one. So I didn't want to make this video an hour and a half long because I figure I should go in depth because it is playoff time. It's the most important time of the year. So, as I mentioned, timestamps in the description if you need to skip to a particular game. Let's hit the intro and we'll get into the first. Game. All right, so before we go into the fastest paced games of the week, if you guys receive any value at this point in the video, if you want to do it right now, pause the video, go down, hit the like button, helps us out tremendously. If you just want to wait until you actually do receive some value from some of the things I say, you can wait until that point as well and hit the like button. That will help us out just the same. And if you have a question you need answered, if you have a big start-sit decision for this week in the playoffs, leave it in the comments. We will get to it. We will answer. We answer all the questions, and we'll give you some rationale behind our answer as well, instead of just saying, oh, start this guy. So subscribe to the channel if you're new, and make sure you guys tune into our live stream so you can get your questions answered before the playoff matchup. So as I mentioned, I split this into two videos, but we're still going to be talking about the fastest paced games. According to RotoViz neutral game script, the Falcons at the Chargers is the fastest paced game of the week by a pretty wide margin. Cowboys at Bengals, second fastest paced game of the week. Cardinals at Giants, pretty wide, pretty fast paced game as well. And then Steelers at Bills, also a pretty fast game. So there's a couple fast-paced games this week, not exactly a tremendous amount, but the Falcons at Chargers, I expect to be a fast-paced game, high-scoring game, all that kind of stuff. So the Thursday night football game is the first game that we are going to get into right now. We have the Patriots at the Rams. I expect this to be kind of a slugfest game, to be honest. So I wouldn't be going out and playing a showdown slate of this game, or going to your waiver wire and trying to attack this game with some of your flex positions. But we have at the quarterback position in this game. I would sit both guys, honestly. I would sit Cam Newton. I would sit Jared Goff. Both defenses in this game are allowing less than 17 points per game to the fantasy quarterback position, and both of them rank top 5 against quarterbacks for fantasy points. So you don't want to be attacking these two defenses. These two defenses are very good, especially against quarterbacks. The Patriots a little bit more susceptible to the run, but the Rams and Patriots defense both very good against quarterbacks. So I wouldn't be going out and attacking either of them. Plus, neither Goff nor Cam is a reliable quarterback. From what we've seen this season, neither of them have a safe floor. Both guys are very capable of dropping less than 3 points, and both guys have done that multiple times this season. And this is a week that is just way too important for you as a fantasy player. You can't be having your quarterback drop 2 points on Thursday Night Football, because then you're going to be just way behind the 8 ball and all that kind of stuff. So to the running back position in this game, you flex Damian Harris and Cam Akers. Neither guy is a sure bet for fantasy explosion. Let me just make that really clear right now. Both guys are uber talented, receiving solid workloads, but neither guy is foolproof. Each guy could bust and get a small workload based on the tendencies of the two coaching staffs to use running back by committees. But Harris has the tougher matchup in this game, coming off of a disappointing game, which was a blowout against Los Angeles, where we actually saw Sony Michel get some run. But I maybe chalk that up more to the blowout than the fact that Sony Michel was back off of injury. I think Damian Harris should be in line for his usual kind of 15 carry, a target or two, hopefully gets into the end zone type of day. This is a very tough matchup, though. So I have him as a high-end RB3 in a similar tier as J.D. McKissick, assuming Antonio Gibson doesn't play. Clyde Edwards-Helaire type, Gio Bernard range. So I'm not saying to play Damian Harris as like a top 15 running back, but I do think you can use him. As far as Cam Akers goes, Patriots are league average against running backs, which makes Akers a low-end RB2 in my opinion. I talked about this on the recap show, but Cam Akers' 22 touches last week was the most by a Rams running back all season. His 63% of the snaps last week was also the most by a Rams running back all season. And this was despite a couple running backs in that backfield, Malcolm Brown and Darrell Henderson, missing a couple games. So you figure someone would have gotten more of a feature role when those guys were out of the lineup, but that wasn't the case. And not only that, but Malcolm Brown played a season low of 16% of the snaps, which his previous season low was 38%, and received a season low 4 touches last week. Darrell Henderson played a season low 22% of the snaps and received a season low 5 touches. I know he left for a little bit of time in this game, but that was his lowest on the season. It looks like it could be Cam Akers' season. What does that mean exactly? It might just mean he's an RB2. I'm not rushing out to start Cam Akers as a top 15 running back, even though this is a good matchup. I do think he has value and he can be flexed or started as a low-end RB2 in this game. So just keep that in mind. If you have Cam Akers, if you're stashing Cam Akers, I would start him over someone like Damian Harris this week. To the wide receiver position in this game, we have Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. As usual, you start those guys and then sit all the Patriots wide receivers. Do not be messing around with Jacoby Myers or anyone else against this Rams pass defense. No one is allowing less points to the fantasy wide receiver position than the Los Angeles Rams. On the other two guys, Woods will be facing Stephon Gilmore in shadow coverage, as most people would expect, leaving Cooper Kupp versus J.C. Jackson in 2 wide receiver sets and then Jonathan Jones in the slot. The Pats are not much worse than the Rams at allowing fantasy points to the receiver position, only allowing 21.2 points to the wide receiver position as a whole, which is top 7 in the NFL. But both guys are still mid to low wide receiver 2s for me. As I mentioned, you can see the matchups on the screen there. Don't be messing around with Josh Reynolds. This is a bad matchup for him. But I do think Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp should be able to get it done for you on Thursday night. But again, this is Thursday night football. I've talked about it a number of times. Weird shit happens sometimes on Thursday night football, and that's just the unfortunate part about TNF. So tight ends, there's no tight ends to speak of in this game. Don't start at a single tight end from this game. Everett and Higbee are just too unreliable week over week in terms of their workload to throw them into your lineup at this point in the season. Okay, to the 1 p.m. games. We have the Vikings at the Buccaneers. Quarterback-wise in this game, I think you can start both quarterbacks. Brady has been a matchup-dependent guy pretty much this whole season. If you go back and look at his game logs and kind of some of the games where he went off for fantasy purposes, he had huge games against Denver, Los Angeles Chargers, Carolina, Las Vegas, and down games against Chicago, New Orleans, Los Angeles Rams, etc. So Vikings are a solid matchup for quarterbacks and have padded their stats recently. The Vikings defense against like the Jags and Bears and a number of bad offenses. I'm not completely bought into that. I still think the Vikings are a pretty bad defense, and I think the Buccaneers offense is talented enough to take advantage of that and score some points in this game. They're allowing like 28 points per game, and I think the Bucs should be able to clear that mark for sure. On the other side of things, Kirk Cousins is a top 5 quarterback over the past couple of weeks. He's been excellent, but as I mentioned, the Vikings have played some bad teams. But while the Bucs defense is not the juggernaut shutdown unit that I thought they could be early on in the season, they are still a top 10 defense in my opinion. And Cousins, not in just my opinion, just in all the metrics that you want to be looking at, Cousins has been significantly worse against good pass defenses this season. If you look back at the Chicago game, Green Bay game, Indianapolis game, he had down games against those good defenses, and most of the games he's done well in were against bad defenses. So much like Tom Brady, he's been a guy that's been very matchup dependent, and this isn't really a good matchup for him. To the running back position, my start of the week at the running back position is my guy, Ronald Jones. And then Dalvin Cook, you obviously will be starting him every single week. The Minnesota Vikings are susceptible to the running back position, allowing big games to Zeke Elliott and James Robinson most recently over the last over the last 3 contests, and allowing a solid game to Mike Davis as well. Ronald Jones has been a guy that feasts on bad run defenses and bad defenses in general. And the reason for this, I watch this team very closely. They're my favorite team. The reason for this is that the Bucs coaching staff will abandon the run immediately if they are losing. Like 6 points, 3 points, doesn't matter. They abandon the run. That's just how they operate. So Ronald Jones, that makes Ronald Jones very game script dependent. And this is a game I expect, if not the Bucs to outright win this game pretty handedly, I do think this is at minimum a close game. And Ronald Jones should still be able to see a lot of touches. As you can see on the screen right now, in games where they played bottom half of the league defenses, you can see rush attempts for Ronald Jones were almost 16 rush attempts per game as compared to 10 rush attempts per game. And if you widen those parameters to like bottom 12 run defenses, it becomes even bigger. It's like 17 to 8 rush attempts per game. So, and you notice all of his rushing touchdowns have come against bad run defenses as well. So I think Ronald Jones in this game and over this stretch of the back half of the season, he had some bad run defenses, sans the Falcons, who they play next week. He'll have the Lions in week 16, which is a great matchup. So I think Ronald Jones should be able to close out this season strong, should be able to put up some great numbers. And then Dalvin Cook, on the other hand, not like Ronald Jones, has a rough stretch on his schedule, but he is Dalvin Cook. So rough stretch on Dalvin Cook's schedule still means 15 to 20 points minimum. In my opinion, he shouldn't have much worse of a game than that in this game because he is pretty much their whole offense. He is the guy that they run through. To the wide receivers in this game, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. You start them all, and if you need a flex play, you can use Antonio Brown as well. Much like Tom Brady, the entire passing offense for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers sees a boost in favorable matchups. These guys could be league winners. If you look at their last 3 games, while it's not favorable for Ronald Jones against Atlanta, Atlanta's an easy pass defense. So Evans is averaging 7 PPR points more per game over the last 2 years against bottom 12 pass defenses. And that number even gets bigger when he's not seeing a shadow corner or a tough cornerback matchup, which he will not be seeing in this game against Minnesota, because while their corners are playing a bit better, they're not great corners. And Mike Evans should be able to take advantage of that. As far as Chris Godwin is concerned, he isn't practicing today because he had pins removed from his finger because he broke his finger, and he still played through it, surprisingly. But he should be back to his full healthy self for probably the first time all season. So I expect him to be very strong down the stretch as well. And then Antonio Brown is starting to get acclimated fully to this offense now. It's his 5th game, I believe, with the team. And he's starting to get more comfortable and starting to get more involved in the offense. As you can see the matchups on the screen there, you got Mike Evans against Cam Dantzler. Dantzler's a tough physical corner, but he's going to have a rough time with Mike Evans. Chris Godwin in the slot against Jeff Gladney is a great advantage for him. One of the highest on the week. And then Antonio Brown against Chris Boyd. That guy's going to get destroyed too. So moral of the story is the Bucs passing game should have a great day in this one. Make sure you can get pieces of that for this game. On the other side of things, the Minnesota passing game, I expect to have a pretty decent day as well. Jamel Dean for the Buccaneers, if you could see the matchup chart on the screen right now, you have Justin Jefferson is slated to go up against Sean Murphy Bunting. I will say, as a Bucs fan, I know this is a fact. If Jamel Dean is back, who is their other starting opposite corner beside other side of Carlton Davis, they move Sean Murphy Bunting to nickel when Jamel Dean is in the lineup. So if Jamel Dean is back, he will be on Justin Jefferson. Adam Thielen will be on Carlton Davis as usual. And then Bunting will be in the slot. It sounds like it's kind of a 50-50 if Dean is going to be back in this game or not. So make sure, if you have Justin Jefferson, especially, I would pay attention to that. Maybe just look at the Buccaneers inactives before the game. I'm sure you're still starting them anyway, but it is worth noting for DFS purposes and just upside potential and all that kind of stuff, that if Bunting is the outside corner opposite Carlton Davis, Justin Jefferson's going to wipe the floor with him. And he's probably going to be a top 5 receiver on the week. So, so just make sure you pay attention to that. Justin Jefferson has had 4 straight games with at least 16 half PPR points and 3 of 4 with double-digit targets. So he has been just absolutely incredible. Probably one of the best rookie seasons we've ever seen from a rookie receiver, sans Odell Beckham the last couple of years. Like, he has just been absolutely tremendous. And then Adam Thielen has been no slouch himself. He has 5 touchdowns in the past 3 games, and he also has a number of double-digit target games as well. So, both guys definitely locked and loaded top 15 receivers for me. To the tight end position in this game, you have Rob Gronkowski, who is an every week starter in my opinion. Gronk had his first 100-yard game of the year the week before the bye, and this is a game which I expect the Bucs to score 30 points. So he definitely has a great shot at a touchdown, combined with the 6+ targets that he has seen 3 of the last 4 games. That makes him a top 5 tight end for me. I think he has a very, very good chance of scoring a touchdown, catching 5 balls for 50 yards, and that should make him a top 3 tight end on the week for me. And then Kyle Rudolph is actually dealing with an injury right now, and he had a donut last week, so I'm not really wanting to start him, but he's still a streamable option, in my opinion, if Irv Smith is out once again. But hopefully you have better options than that. I actually had to start him last week because I had Mark Andrews, who has COVID-19. Hopefully Mark Andrews is back for this week as well. But to the next game, we have Cardinals at Giants. As I mentioned, this is going to be one of the more faster paced games of the week. Kyler Murray and Daniel Jones. I think you can start Kyler Murray, obviously, and then Daniel Jones is a streamer, I would say. Kyler has been bad. There's no really sugarcoating it. I have him at QB9 in my rankings right now. He got you to this point. If you have Kyler Murray, he got you to this point in the season. He got you to the playoffs. He's one of the sole reasons why you're in the playoffs, because he was the QB1 by a mile for the first 10 weeks of the season. So you probably should start him in this game. However, I would start a guy like Ryan Tannehill, Lamar Jackson, Tom Brady over him, just because the Giants are allowing only 15.5 PPR points fantasy points per game to quarterbacks, and they just shut down Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks. So, I mean, Kyler Murray could have a down game in this one, but I think it's just, honestly, unless you have a great option like the ones I just mentioned, you cannot sit Kyler Murray because he got you to this point. You'll feel like an idiot if you lose your matchup because you put Kyler Murray on your bench and he dropped 31 points. Like, that is just the definition of overthinking fantasy. Sometimes fantasy ain't hard. Anyway, Daniel Jones is expected to play on the other side of things. Barring any setbacks, the news came out today that he should play regardless of his hamstring injury that he's dealing with. It probably limits his rushing floor and rushing ceiling to some degree if he's going to play in this one dealing with a hamstring injury. But I still think he is usable as a top 18 guy rather than starting Cam Newton, for example, or Jared Goff, or even Phillip Rivers or Derek Carr. I would rather start Daniel Jones in this game if he's going to play. I think the biggest beneficiary to Daniel Jones playing is Wayne Gallman, who I think is definitely a start, as well as Kenyon Drake. Wayne Gallman is the RB7 in points per game since Devontae Freeman went out. What's more impressive, too, is the fact that he's played Philly twice, Tampa Bay, and Washington over those last, 7 games that he's been the starter. And all 4 of those matchups are great against, or like tough against fantasy running backs. And Gallman scored 12.7 half PPR points or more in all 4 of those games. So not only was he good against those teams, he did it in all 4 games. This week, he gets the Cardinals, who are allowing top 12 running back fantasy numbers and rushing touchdowns to the fantasy running back position. So I think Wayne Gallman should be a top 12 running back this week. He is currently RB12 for me on the week, and I think I would start him over a number of other guys that you maybe wouldn't assume that I would start him over, including Kenyon Drake, who's in this game. I would start him over Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I would start him over J.K. Dobbins. I would start him over Myles Gaskin, even though I love Myles Gaskin. I think I would still start Wayne Gallman over him. I think Wayne Gallman is a pretty much played himself into locked and loaded RB2 range, high-end RB2 range. So definitely be starting Wayne Gallman. The Daniel Jones boost will definitely help him out. Kenyon Drake, on the other hand, hasn't really been too far behind Wayne Gallman over the same kind of stretch of games. Now finally seeing the goal line work instead of Kyler Murray, who was basically taking all the rushing touchdowns away from Kenyon Drake. This is another tough matchup for him, though. It's an easy matchup for Wayne Gallman. It is not an easy matchup for Kenyon Drake. The Giants are quite good against the run. It's very evident by their front with Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams, Dalvin Tomlinson up front that they're just hard to run on because they got those big nasties up front. But I still think Kenyon Drake is able to get enough touches and potentially score a touchdown in this game to return value on the RB19 slot that I have him ranked at. So definitely don't feel too worried about rolling him out in your lineup this week. To the wide receiver position in this game, DeAndre Hopkins and Sterling Shepard are the only 2 receivers I'm willing to start in this game. DeAndre Hopkins has seen shadow coverage 3 times this season. Versus Buffalo a couple weeks ago, he was awesome, but he was he was a little bit mad before catching the Hail Murray. So I don't know what you want to take away from that. But these past 2 weeks, New England against Stephon Gilmore and Los Angeles against Jalen Ramsey, he's combined for 107 yards and a touchdown. So he has not been overly DeAndre Hopkins-esque the past 2 weeks against 2 very good shadow corners. He's got another one this week. James Bradbury is a very, very good corner. And if Hopkins is right in this game, if he's able to take advantage of James Bradbury, who just shut down DK Metcalf, I might add, Kyler Murray should have a great game in this one. But if DeAndre Hopkins is not right, it's going to make it tough for this offense to get things going unless Kyler Murray does it on the ground with his legs. So at least so far this season, this offense has gone how DeAndre Hopkins has gone. Basically, if DeAndre Hopkins has a good game, this offense is very good. Kyler Murray is very good. If DeAndre Hopkins has a down game, then the offense in general takes a hit. So as I mentioned, those are the matchups on the screen. You can see them there. I'm not interested in starting Christian Kirk, Andy Isabella, anyone else on the Cardinals. It's just too risky, too much riding on this week for you to be starting a guy like that in your lineup for the fantasy playoffs. So Sterling Shepard, as I mentioned, is the only other receiver I would start in this game. Sterling Shepard was bad last week, but he was without his starting quarterback, so I'm not really taking away too much from that game. And he still saw 6 targets in that game as well. And he sees a much nicer matchup in this one with his starting quarterback back. Darius Slayton should be taking away Patrick Peterson in coverage, as you can see on the matchup chart. Darius Slayton's unstartable. Do not put Darius Slayton into your lineup, but he just benefits Daniel Jones and Sterling Shepard by taking away Patrick Peterson out of the play. Sterling Shepard against Drake Kirkpatrick, he should be able to catch his usual 7 balls, 8 balls. Maybe gets 70 yards, maybe gets into the end zone. That should be enough for him to be a mid wide receiver 3, back end wide receiver 3 if you need to throw him into your lineup. And then to the tight end position in this game, you could start Evan Ingram with relative certainty. 8+ targets in 5 of his last 6 games is remarkable volume for a tight end. And Evan Ingram is starting to play a lot better than he was earlier in the season. So no worries about starting Evan Ingram going forward. All right, Kansas City at Miami Dolphins. Quarterback-wise in this game, you always know to start Patrick Mahomes. Tua Tagovailoa is actually a streamer in this one for me. Tua isn't exactly a sexy option right now, but he should be in a position where he's forced to throw the ball. for once, which he really hasn't been in thus far this season. He should be at least in line for some passing yardage and passing touchdown volume. He's QB 20 for me, though. He's not a high-end option. I do think you can use him in a pinch, but again, this is playoff week. I probably wouldn't be leaving my playoff hopes up to Tua Tagovailoa if I can help it. To the running back position in this game, as I mentioned, I love Myles Gaskin this week. He jumps right back into his old role, getting 23 touches last week, 70+% of the snaps, and all the goal line work. And I know some people might say, oh, it was because Salvin Ahmed and DeAndre Washington and Matt Breida were all out. But guess what? Those guys didn't exist for fantasy purposes until Myles Gaskin got hurt, because Myles Gaskin is the starter on this team. He's a locked and loaded top 15 running back rest of the season, as far as I'm concerned. To the Chiefs side of things, though, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is someone who's been very, very frustrating to own. As someone who drafted him 6th overall in the league I care most about, I can definitely attest to the fact that he's been frustrating to own. The game last week, I luckily did not start him. I heard that Le'Veon Bell was in line to get most of the touches, and I benched him for Brandon Ayuk, which worked out quite well. I'm throwing the game out. I know it probably sucked if you had him in your lineup and he donutted you, but I think because he wasn't healthy he had the stomach flu supposedly. I think the Chiefs passing offense is really the problem for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, right? Because the Chiefs are a great passing offense, the best passing offense in the NFL. They have the best play caller, the best quarterback, the best deep threat, the best tight end in the NFL right now. So it's very hard to blame them for not running the ball and passing at the highest clip in the NFL, because I think all of us would agree that that's the smart thing to do when you have Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce. But we just wish, for Clyde Edwards-Helaire's sake, that he would catch some passes, because Patrick Mahomes doesn't throw to his running back, and they're not running the ball very much. But what I have noticed with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which is a glimmer of hope, much like Ronald Jones, the game plan going into the game against run funnel defenses generally lead to more rushing volume. And what I mean by this was a couple weeks back, they played the Bills, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire got like 26 carries. And the reason for this probably is because Andy Reid, when he made the game plan for the week, probably realized that Buffalo was susceptible to running backs and is susceptible to the run, and they're much better against the pass. So in this game, the Miami Dolphins are great against the pass and much more susceptible to the run. So I think Miami has a chance to allow a decent game to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which is why I currently have him at RB21. I am not confident in it, though. If you start Clyde Edwards-Helaire and he does bad, he's probably going to do the same thing for me, because I think I need to roll him out there, because it's the Chiefs offense. There's a lot of scoring opportunities, and this is a favorable matchup for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but I will not be shocked if he disappoints me. And I will take all the blame if you start him because of what I said there, and he disappoints you as well. To the wide receiver position in this game, Tyreek Hill and Devontae Parker are the only two receivers I would start. Parker is undeniably better with Ryan Fitzpatrick as the quarterback, but this game script, as I mentioned, and a matchup with Charvarius Ward is bound to have him at least catch a lot of passes, if nothing else. So Devontae Parker is a top 30 receiver for me. Tyreek Hill is a top 5 receiver for me. He will likely go bonkers in this game yet again. I can't trust anyone else in this offense. As far as the wide receiver position is concerned, this pass defense is quite good. The Miami Dolphins pass defense, minus Nick Needham in the slot, who just coincidentally is matched up against Tyreek Hill, which is why I think he's going to go bonkers in this game. Tight end wise in this game, Travis Kelce is an auto start as undisputed greatest tight end in fantasy this year, last year, the year before, every year that he's finished as the tight end one, which I believe this is the 5th straight year for Travis Kelce, which is absolutely remarkable for him. But Mike Gesicki is the bigger talking point at the tight end position in this game, because he came on last week. He had a number of targets, 11 targets, 9 receptions. Not that I totally trust him. I'm not just willing to throw him into my lineup as a top 10 tight end, because he's Mike Gesicki. He's disappeared before, but much like Parker, he should be in line for a lot of catches. So I do think you can roll him out there as a top 12 tight end. It's concerning a little bit, but I think he's going to be just fine in this game. To the next game we have here, Titans at Jaguars. And surprisingly, this game for once is not on Thursday Night Football, as it usually is. But quarterback-wise in this game, my start of the week is Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill has been a very matchup-dependent quarterback all season, posting 26.8 PPR points the last time he played Jacksonville. Their defense is even worse than it was back then. So I expect a 30-point outing, unfortunately for me, because I've got to play him in my playoff matchup. But I think Ryan Tannehill is going to go absolutely nuts in this game. And thankfully, I have A.J. Brown to counteract some of the production that Ryan Tannehill is going to put up. But yeah, so Ryan Tannehill, if you have him, I would start him over Kyler Murray. I would start him over Josh Allen. I would start him over Deshaun Watson. I think he is my quarterback 4 on the week, and I have no hesitation in saying that. I think he's just in for a monster game. To the running back position in this game, not much analysis needed, although I think it is worth noting that James Robinson has a bit of a tough schedule these next couple of weeks, so just be prepared for that. And Derrick Henry obviously is the exact opposite situation, has an absolutely cake schedule the next couple of weeks. So if you have Derrick Henry and you don't win your championship, you have only yourself to blame, and potentially Derrick Henry if he disappoints. But the wide receiver position in this game, as I mentioned already, A.J. Brown should be a smash play in this game, as well as Corey Davis. They should be virtual locks for production in this game. You can fire both of them up as top 20 guys. A.J. Brown, unfortunately, last week was a victim of a freak play where he was stripped from inside like the 2-yard line, and the ball rolled into the end zone. His McCole Pruitt picked it up and got the touchdown. Had that play not happen and A.J. Brown gets into the end zone, he has a 20-point fantasy day and no one's concerned about him. But I don't think anyone is concerned about him. I'm just pointing that out in case you missed the game. The matchups in this game are as follows, though. You have A.J. Brown against Trey Herndon. He should be able to just absolutely wipe the floor with him. Corey Davis against Greg Mabin. I've never even heard of that dude. So Corey Davis and A.J. Brown, just absolute locked and loaded starters in this game. And then onto the other side of the ball, we have DJ Chark. DJ Chark, if you had him, I had him. He disappointed you versus Minnesota last week, but this dude has been electric in good matchups, and this is almost as good as it gets for Jacksonville. I have a very difficult start-sit decision in my playoff matchup this week. Let me know in the comments what you guys would do. This is the decision I'm faced with. I have one flex spot available. I have DJ Chark in this game against Tennessee, who's a great matchup, and that is actually where I'm leaning. J.K. Dobbins against Cleveland, which is a bad matchup, and we just saw J.K. Dobbins disappoint, I would say, this past week against Dallas. Even though he had a solid day, his usage was not exactly what I wanted to see. And I have Clyde Edwards-Helaire against Miami. So I'm facing, it's either Chark, Edwards-Helaire, or J.K. Dobbins. My gut is actually telling me to play Chark, which is very unfortunate, given the fact that I thought it would be an easy smash play J.K. Dobbins, because I thought he would just get back to his usual role that he had last week. But that wasn't the case. That's giving me some pause on J.K. Dobbins. Who knows? I could look like an idiot and J.K. Dobbins could get 70% of the touches against Cleveland, but who the hell knows? DJ Chark in this game will be going up against Malcolm Butler, who does not have the speed to hang with DJ Chark. Another reason why I do like him this week. I have him in my top 30 receivers, and I think if you have him, you might have to play him. I know it's risky. He's been boom or bust, but you might have to play him in this game. To the tight end position, speaking of risky, Jonnu Smith, if he plays, is in your lineup. He has obviously seen a downtick since his great start to the season, but I still view him as a boom or bust tight end one, much like Mike Gesicki, Hayden Hurst, a bunch of other guys. So if he is back in the game again, you definitely need to start him. And if he is out again, I'll take Anthony Firkser as a top 15 tight end as well. To the next game that we have here, Cowboys at Bengals. Sit both quarterbacks in this game. If you had to, I don't hate streaming Andy Dalton, but this is playoff time and there's no buys, so you should have better options than Andy Dalton. To the running back position in this game, we have Zeke Elliott and Gio Bernard. Both guys have been up and down this season. There's no sugarcoating that. This is a great matchup, though, for both guys. And even though Gio in particular has had inconsistent volume the past couple of weeks, I'll still trust him as a high-end RB3, someone in that Damian Harris range against one of the worst run defenses in the league that just got annihilated by the Ravens with J.K. Dobbins and Lamar Jackson and Gus Edwards and even Mark Ingram contributing somehow. And the Washington football team the previous week with Antonio Gibson going absolutely haywire on them. So I think Gio Bernard should be able to get back on track in this game. Zeke Elliott should be able to get back on track in this game, even though he had a solid game last week against the Ravens. To the wide receiver position in this game, we have Amari Cooper, my start of the week, T. Higgins, and CeeDee Lamb and Tyler Boyd are low-end flex plays, but I think you could do worse, I guess. Since Dalton returned from his injury, Amari Cooper has actually been a very reliable wide receiver too. I have no hesitation throwing him into my lineup this week. As you can see on the screen there, he's got LaShawn Sims in coverage, which probably shouldn't end too well for LaShawn Sims. CeeDee Lamb, on the other hand, has been a floor play, I would say. He's kind of a PPR guy, but not a tremendous amount of upside. He generally has like stat lines that are like 6 for 41 and a touchdown if he gets one. So he's right on the border of wide receiver 3 to 4 range for me at wide receiver 37. I would rather play a bunch of other options if I can, but I think you could do a lot worse than CeeDee Lamb. And he has Mackenzie Alexander in coverage, who's the best corner on the Bengals, in my opinion. But William Jackson's pretty solid as well. So just keep that in mind with CeeDee Lamb. I'm not overly excited about him. T. Higgins, on the other hand, I am excited about this week. He is my start of the week. I think he performed fairly decently in a horrible matchup last week against Xavier Howard and the Miami Dolphins pass defense with Brandon Allen as his quarterback. But I am willing to start T. Higgins if Brandon Allen plays as a mild wide receiver 3 over DJ Chark or Brandon Ayuk due to this matchup with Rashard Robinson and the Cowboys secondary. So Tyler Boyd, on the other hand, is one spot behind CeeDee Lamb in that same borderline startable range. But T. Higgins is really the guy I'm actually excited about. If you go back and look at his game logs, he's been the model of consistency. He has had very minimal bust games. And when he busts, it's like 6 catches for 55 yards. Like that doesn't kill you if he has that kind of stat line, especially in a PPR league. So I think T. Higgins, if you have him, is actually a pretty viable starter. ECR had him way lower than I thought they were going to. They had him at wide receiver 40. He's all the way up at wide receiver 30 for me. So I'm very much willing to start him. To the tight end position in this game, Schultz is a low-end streamer. We kind of know what he is at this point. If you're in the playoffs, you probably aren't relying on him, but you can use him if you really need to. To the final game of the second last game of the 1 o'clock slate here, we have Texans at Bears. Deshaun Watson is a start. Trubisky you can stream. I don't want to have to start Trubisky, but he is usable. Watson definitely got slightly worse without Will Fuller in this game, but he still figures to be a back-end quarterback one, unless you have Ryan Tannehill, Justin Herbert, Tom Brady as your other quarterbacks, and you're probably still starting Deshaun Watson. Those guys I would probably start over him, and then the obvious names like Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes I would start over him as well. But Deshaun Watson's right on that back-end quarterback one, quarterback 8, I believe is where I have him, or quarterback 9. So I still think you can start him in this game, even though it is a bad matchup. To the running back position in this game, David Johnson is like a low-end flex play, I would say. And then David Montgomery is a top 10 running back, to be honest. David Montgomery looks to continue his uber efficient stretch that he's been playing on in this game against another atrocious run defense. So he's a locked-in top 10 guy for me this week. David Johnson, on the other hand, was limited in his workload last week. While I expect him to get closer to feature back touches this week, he's going to have to score a touchdown to be fantasy relevant against this Bears front, because he's not going to get much done in the way of efficiency. Wide receiver wise in this game, we have Allen Robinson, Brandon Cooks. You can start both of those guys, and I would sit Kiki QT. I know everyone's super excited about him, but I'm sitting him. On Allen Robinson's side of things, of course, Allen Robinson has Vernon Hargreaves in coverage, as you can see on the screen right now, the week I play him in fantasy playoffs, right? Like, just congrats on winning your week if you have Allen Robinson, because he's going to wipe the floor with Vernon Hargreaves if that is indeed who he's matched up with in coverage. He is a top 5 receiver for me on this week. This shouldn't end well for the Houston Texans secondary. On the other side of things, I said Kiki QT, sit him. For the love of God, sit Kiki QT, because for one, he was good when Brandon Cooks left the game because he was being evaluated for a concussion and Brandon Cooks was out for about a quarter and a half. So Kiki QT was a main beneficiary of that. And on top of that, the Colts are, believe it or not, much better are much friendlier to fantasy wide receivers than the Chicago Bears are. The Chicago Bears are one of the best defenses in the NFL against wide receivers. So I would sit everyone who's not named Brandon Cooks at the wide receiver position on the Houston Texans. He should be still a top 25 receiver, Brandon Cooks, but in this one, he has a rough matchup, so I'm willing to downgrade him to a back-end wide receiver 2. Whereas if he was in a good matchup, he'd probably be a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2 for me. As you can see, he is matched up against Kyle Fuller, which is just not a great matchup, but I think Brandon Cooks should get enough volume to help offset that. To the tight end position, much like the other game that we talked about, start absolutely 0 tight ends from this game. Both are committees with Cole Kmet and Jimmy Graham, and Jordan Akins and Darren Fells. Neither guy is any way trustworthy. Cole Kmet is probably the best option in this game, but even him, he's just not trustworthy at all. So just sit all the tight ends in this game. To the Broncos at Panthers. This is the final game of the episode for us, and then we'll continue on with the 4 p.m. games on tomorrow's episode, as I mentioned. Quarterback-wise in this game, you sit both quarterbacks. Playoff time is too important to be trusting Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater to help bring you home a championship, despite the decent matchups for both guys. To the running back position in this game, we got some breaking news right as I was recording this, is that CMC apparently tweaked his quad, according to Clickbait on RotoWorld. That Matt Rule had basically said he was working out on his personal time and he tweaked his quad. So we'll have to see if Christian McCaffrey plays. This is a laundry list of injuries now for CMC on this season, but if he plays, he's a top 3 guy. If he misses, then Mike Davis is a top 20 guy. We basically know the drill at this point in the season. Christian McCaffrey has missed enough time, unfortunately, for us to find out how to handle it when he is out of the lineup. Melvin Gordon, on the other hand, had a nice rushing day last week, but he split snaps and touches with Phillip Lindsay virtually 50-50, as has been the case most of this season. Anytime Phillip Lindsay is out there, it is a split backfield. So Melvin Gordon is the running back I would play in this game, but he is RB24 for me in a good matchup versus ECR 17. I don't know why ECR has him so high. I know he broke a long run last week, but he virtually did nothing else outside of that. So just keep that in mind. If you have Melvin Gordon, I think you can start him, but I'm not overly excited about it. to the wide receiver position in this game. We have a lot of kind of stuff up in the air in this one, but Robbie Anderson is a definite start. No matter what happens, you start Robbie Anderson. Curtis Samuel, if he plays, is a flex play. And the reason he's a flex play is because DJ Moore should be out for this game. DJ Moore has COVID-19 or is a close contact for COVID. I can't exactly remember, but that makes Curtis Samuel a top 30 guy for me if he is in. And then if you could see on the matchup chart there, we have Robbie Anderson against AJ Boye. Well, AJ Boye won't play now because he has been suspended for PED usage, much like Will Fuller was. So that makes this matchup very, very appetizing for Robbie Anderson. I think he is my wide receiver 13 in this game, and he'll probably even see a bigger bump up if Curtis Samuel is out for this game as well. So I would feel 100% comfortable playing Robbie Anderson. And if DJ Moore misses, you can flex Curtis Samuel if he is active for this game. On the Broncos side of things, I wouldn't be comfortable starting any Broncos wide receiver personally. Tim Patrick is the guy I would start if I absolutely had to, but he is a very low-end flex play at best, and Judy is just completely unstartable at this point. You can see the matchups on the screen there. It doesn't even really matter, in my opinion. I'm not starting any of these guys if I can help it. It's just too important of a week to leave up to Tim Patrick or Jerry Judy at this point. To the tight end position in this game, you could start Noah Fant. Noah Fant could end up being a sneaky league winner, to be honest. If you look at his next couple of games, he has some easy opponents on his schedule, and I think he's going to be able to take advantage of that. All right, that's the end of the 1 p.m. games. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Make sure you guys hit the like button if you did. Comment any of your questions, any of your thoughts down below. Stay tuned for the next episode, which will be dropping tomorrow around the same time. And stay tuned for our live streams, and make sure you guys join us in those if you need any of your questions answered in real time. You guys want to hear our reactions to them, all that kind of stuff. Just make sure you guys are tuned in. We will be live before Thursday Night Football, and we will also be live before Sunday playoff games commence. So good luck in the playoffs this week. Peace out, guys. Enjoy your Wednesday.